Hey, it's Mikey Mike. Hey, we are lifting up the Palisade. That's right. First thing in the instructions is to get the battery post off. So that's what we got to do. And man, that's all over the instructions. So make sure we do that. Then we're going to have to rip the tires off and loosen up the axle nut. So my buddy Gavin here is doing a lot of work. And there's a little crimp here on the axle nut. A little tricky to get off. This Makita impact driver is really helpful to get some of this stuff off. I actually had to go borrow a 1.25 inch socket, I believe, from a buddy of mine, so that was helpful. And I bought new drive nut or axle nuts as well, because once that crimps down, it's a little difficult to get it back on without messing them up. Little brass punch here to kind of move it back, and we put the nut back on to keep it secure. When we were backing these off from the shocks, the struts, the impact driver wasn't doing a great job. It was actually spinning in the back. So what you have to do is put a socket on the bolt and a wrench on the nut, and kind of do a reverse unbolting or something like that. Yeah, it was kind of crazy. You've got to pull the cotter pin from the steering rod, and then the impact driver did pretty good with getting that off without spinning it too crazy. And then a nice little brass mallet to pop that off of the
strut bolts. Okay.
Pulling the lower strut bolts off here. Impact driver did a great job with that. Make sure you have it supported before you pull all the bolts out.
And then we have to get the jack underneath the.
Oh, sorry. Let's do the other side because I already put the jack over there.
No problem. Okay, get that one on.
So it's giving us a 2.5 inch lift, Truxxx 2.5 inch lift kit. It took us about 10 hours actually to do this lift. We had a few breaks in between, but it definitely wasn't quick for us. Just took our time, make sure we do it right. Pulling the struts off were pretty easy.
I think so. I think we take it out, put it on, and then put it back up in there.
Okay. I'm just curious if we have enough play here with
Brake line. Oh.
So another pro tip is remove the brake lines, or not remove them, but loosen the keepers off of the brake lines. It'll give you a lot more play there. We had the anti-braking system, or the I don't know which line it is, to tell you the truth, but it was under tension, so we were able to get that loosened up before we broke anything. Look at that thing, it looks like a piano wire. So loosen that thing up right there. And then we also loosened the brake line bracket as well, and that gave us enough play to lower the whole assembly down without putting anything under tension. So the one thing I have to double check is the rear was a little tight after we assembled it. Not after we assembled it, but in the lowest position. So I'm going to double check to make sure I don't need a brake extension or relocate the little bracket. So the puck goes right on top of the strut assembly. That's your lift right there. And bolt that into place. And now there's a coarse nut and a fine threaded nut. I tried to use the stock nuts on the top, and that did not work. It kept it in place for a second while we figured out what we were doing wrong. But we slide the strut up into the hole here, and I tried to put the nuts on, and they were just kind of locked up. So back to the drawing board, looked at the instructions again and the provided hardware. And sure enough, they provided the right hardware for the assembly. And we just disregard the stock nuts. So it's like, oh, it's biting. What's going on? Am I stripping them? So I tried the other one and same problem. So figured out a problem, and we got to get the little silver nuts there, and then I put a little Loctite on the bolts, and we use Loctite on everything. Holy cow! You know, this is the most shaky part of your car, right? So everything's gonna could rattle loose, especially if you're doing a little overlanding. So make sure you're using that Loctite. And then all I did is Google all the torque specs for all the bolts. And we torqued all the bolts to spec. After we got it all pretty much assembled and knew what we were doing. So it's a tedious little install, but not undoable by the normal person. I definitely recommend you having a professional do it. Not quite sure what that would have cost me. I know it took a lot of time for us to do, but yeah. And the hardest part was the sway bar reinstallation. The removal of the sway bar bolts that hold it down to keep it in place was a little tricky to get to. It was super tight under the car, and then there was a weird little like a heat shield or something over one of them, and that hid the bolts to hold the sway bar down. That was tricky. That was definitely tricky. So reassembling the brake assembly lines back up. And here's the new drive axle nuts. So I bought 4 of them because I thought we were gonna have to do the same thing in the rear, but they only had to move back the front bolts or axles splines there. So Gavin's repinning the bolt there, and the first time we tried it, we used a screwdriver and it sliced the bolt in half. That's why we decided to go get some new axle bolts, and then we used like a square style punch or a round punch, and that bolted down really well. So don't forget to put all the cotter pins back in and torque the spec.
Done. Yep. Good news and bad news.
Gavin's giving me the good news or the bad news.
New nut on.
We forgot to put the new nut on. We put the old nut on. It's kind of funny. So we redid that and pinned that to place on the other side, and now we're good to go. So always a learning curve. You got to kind of keep an eye on what you're doing. This is a little extension piece. Actually, we put that extension on the wrong part there. That little extension piece goes on the top of the strut and faces up. We put it on the bottom and faced it up, and that was incorrect. So that was what we were struggling with. So I actually Facebooked a buddy of mine that has the same kit. He took a picture of his, and then I was able to get that correct. So we left that disassembled until we got the information. I put a call in the Truxxx, but it was on the weekend, so they didn't get back to me until, but I double verified it on Monday, which is totally understandable, but, so I was able to phone a friend, yeah, so I used that phone a friend feature in the instruction manual, and it worked out pretty good, so. And that's the brake line bracket there, that was a little tight on, I think this is the rear, yeah, that's the rear. And that was a little tricky. So these are the self-leveling shocks. Which was weird. I thought they were kind of air-lined or some kind of automated shock, but it's just I guess it's a valved or a pressurized type gas shock that self-levels. So it kind of senses where it's supposed to be, and it bypasses fluid to another location. So pulling out the rear shock strut. auto leveling piece of there, and it says auto leveling on the shock, so it has some sort of valving, and they are expensive. So pull the back assembly off here, and then all you have to do is lower that down and push it with your foot to pull the spring out. And see that little foam piece on top of there? What I did is the bracket, or the puck that goes in there, so we're putting the puck back in. You just set that on top and squish it in there. But I put a little bit of Dynamat on top, so because the puck didn't have anything, and since the shock had a rubber foamy piece on top, I put a little bit of sound dampening on there, just so it didn't clink. You know, if who knows, right? So I just trying to be on the safe side.
Okay.
So we're putting all this back together. So we had to put a screwdriver in there to line up the. There's a little rubber piece in there, and it wouldn't go in straight. For some reason, I couldn't get it lined back up, and all it took was a screwdriver to just kind of bend it down, and it just the whole little piece there just kind of bent right back in place. So it was pretty easy. So just using the impact just to push on it. We're not screwing it in. We didn't want to damage any of the threads, and it just slid right in. So piece of cake. So the rear went pretty easy. Front was a little trickier. The sway bars all the way around were just probably the toughest part, especially the front. Pro tip: we loosened the sway bar brackets, but we took the bolts completely out. I would recommend just loosening them up as much as you can to get that free play in the sway bar, and not take the bolts out.
Use a floor jack transmission. Anything allows you to simply bolt it in using the factory hardware, but do not tighten until the truck is back on the ground. Just crack it loose a little bit.
So make sure you're following the instructions, because we
applied shock extension. You need to remove the upper shock mount from the shock shaft using a 17mm socket or wrench.
So once again, make sure we'll follow the instructions, because we missed a couple little steps during the process. So here's the upper or the rear plate. So I used a little bit of Dynamat on top of that, because it was, like I said, the other piece had foam on it. And put a little piece of Dynamat on here, and now it's less likely to make a racket in the back if it somehow were to lose tension.
Push down on there.
So we got to put the shock extenders on. They're like a 2 or 3 inch shock extender. It goes under this little cap here. And don't forget your Loctite. And what we did is, it doesn't say, don't pop a blood vessel in putting this thing on, but, tighten up nice and tight. So we just use the kind of the shock method. No pun intended there. Just took a wrench and kind of smacked it with the brass mallet, and that worked out pretty good. And the shock spins, but that little snap will help it out. So reassemble this thing, put the nut on, and make sure you torque the spec. We use the impact wrench, but there is a torque for this particular nut going on top. And it is nylock, so it's not coming off anywhere, but make sure you get that proper. Don't forget the cap to pop back on. And now we got our lifted 2021 Palisade with 2.5 inch Truxxx lift. Looks awesome. I love the ride height. All we need is some all-terrain tires. So if you have any suggestions on some nice all-terrains, let me know, because we're going to go hit the trails and have some fun. This is definitely not a Jeep. We got a Jeep over there off to the side, if you can notice that, but we are able to get off some nice fire roads and some, you know, roads that have a little bit higher center line there. It's going to work out perfect. And a nice ride height, a lot better. So this is Mikey Mike. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you subscribe, hit that like button, and we'll see you soon. All right, peace.